Krishna, everyone. It's so wonderful to see you all again for our second session of Bhagavad Gita journey. I hope you all had some time to reflect on what we've covered in the first session. Last time we laid a solid foundation. We discovered who wrote Gita, where it come from, how powerful Arjuna's humility was, how just by asking sincerely he opened the door for Krishna to speak. Today we begin an epic journey into Mahabharata, the grand stage on which Bhagavad Gita was spoken. But before we jump into action packed tales of kings and queens, warriors and sages, let's take a step back and reflect. Mahabharata is not just a storybook. We've covered its itihasa, it's a mirror of life. Every character, every decision, every battle reflect something we all go through. This sacred text shows us the war within, between right and wrong, duty and desire, ego and surrender. And where does this Gita take place? Not in a peaceful temple, not in a meditation cave, but right on the battlefield, Kurukshetra, a place of chaos, emotion, and life changing decisions. And isn't that so relatable? We all face our own Kurukshetra every day. At school, when we must choose honesty over popularity. At home, when duty feels hard. With friends, when our ego gets in the way. And today is just not about hearing a cool story. It's about meeting the characters, understanding what led to the war, and most importantly, discovering the timeless lessons hidden in their choices. So let's get ready, guys. Buckle up. We are traveling back 5,000 years into the world of Mahabharata. But we're not listening, we're learning. We're not watching, we're reflecting. So let's begin this divine journey together, shall we? So the story starts with King Shantanu, who was a noble and just a ruler of Hastinapur. And one serene day, he wandered around the banks of sacred Ganga. He saw a breathtaking, beautiful woman standing in the river mist. She radiated divinity. She was none other than Mother Gita, Mother Ganga herself. He was captivated. Without hesitation, he approached her and asked her hand in marriage. Ganga looked into his eyes and gave a curious condition. She said, "You must never question anything I do." Blinded by love and longings, Shantanu agreed. They married, and soon Ganga bore him a child. But to Shantanu's horror, she took the newborn and drowned it in the river. He was shaken, confused, and he said nothing, remembering his promise. Then it happened again and again and again. 7 sons were born, and each time Ganga ended their lives in the same way. The king's heart broke, but his lips stayed sealed. Finally, when the 8th child was born and Ganga moved to drown him too, Shantanu could no longer bear it. He said, "Stop! I can't stay silent anymore. Why are you doing this?" At that moment, Ganga paused and everything changed. She explained that these are not ordinary children. These are 8 Vasus, celestial beings. Vasus are celestial beings cursed to be born on earth. And by drowning them, she was liberating them from their curse. But the 8th one, Devavrat, had to live out a full human life. So now, let's reflect and take on some lessons, shall we? Lesson number one: don't judge what you don't understand. Shantanu saw the only external, a mother drowning her children. But the truth was deeper. Ganga was not cruel. She was compassionate, fulfilling a divine duty. And so often in life, we jump to conclusions too. We react, criticize, or accuse without understanding the full story. But the real wisdom is this: pause before you judge. Seek the story behind the action. After that, Ganga left, taking Devavrat with her to raise and to train him in the highest arts of warfare, politics, and wisdom. Years passed. One day, as Shantanu stood by the river once again, he saw a strong, radiant young man holding back the mighty Ganga with his arrows. It was Devavrat, his son, now grown and accomplished. Ganga returned him to Shantanu, saying, "Here is your son, trained by sages, Guru Brahaspati, ready to take his place in the world." And he got war training from none other than Lord Parshuram. But how did Shantanu and Ganga's story even begin? Let's rewind a bit. Before all of this, when Shantanu first saw Ganga and proposed, she said, "You never question me." This was no small condition. Yet, Shantanu, driven by love and desire, agreed instantly. So, lesson number two we need to learn here is desire sometimes blinds us to conditions. Ganga's condition was clear, but Shantanu ignored the possible consequences. How often we do the same? We rush into decisions, relationship, opportunities, temptations because they feel good now. We don't read the fine print. Our scriptures speak of two paths: prayas and shreyas. Prayas is a short term pleasure, shreyas is a long term good. Let's ask ourselves honestly: are we choosing what feels good now or what's truly good for us in the long run? And now, let's go deeper. Think about how Ganga is described, not as a river, but as a goddess, a mother. Even her son's weapons had names. Arjuna's bow has a name, Gandiv. Krishna's conch has a name. In our tradition, nothing is seen just as a thing, which leads us to lesson number three. We have a culture of personalism. In Vedic culture, everything is seen sacred and personal: nature, objects, people. Even if we touch a book with our foot by accident, we are taught to say sorry. Why? Because knowledge is sacred. Tools that serve us are worthy of respect. Contrast that with today, where often we treat people like things and things like people. But the wisdom of our tradition reminds us: use things, love people. Let's reclaim that attitude of reverence towards nature, towards our elders, even the simple items we use every day. And finally, reflect on King Shantanu's journey. He experienced deep love. He went through unbearable sorrow. Then he found joy again when his son Devrat returned. So lesson number four is both and good and bad times comes to an end. Whether it is a heartbreak or reunion, highs and lows came and went. And that's the nature of life. Nothing is permanent. Neither our best days nor our worst days. There's a beautiful story of a king who for a message, asked for a message that would lift him in sorrow and humble in joy. He said, "Give me a message which will lift me in sorrow and humble me in joy." And the answer was simple. A short message says, This too shall pass. Let's anchor ourselves in that timeless truth. So, Ganga departs. Young Devrat now stands at the threshold of destiny. He will grow into Bhishma, one of the noblest and most powerful characters in Mahabharata. And in the next slide, we'll discover what made him take a vow so fierce, which changed the future of the entire kingdom. So stay with me because this story is just beginning. So we saw the divine birth of Devrat, the mighty warrior, right? So today, let's see how his inner strength, shaped by values and love, began to shine. So Devrat was raised by Mother Ganga herself, not in the arms and warfare, but in wisdom, discipline, and self control. He grew into a radiant young prince, brave, humble, and wise, the perfect heir of the throne of Hastinapur. King Shantanu was proud and content. Everything seemed settled. But one day, while riding through the forest, Shantanu was enchanted by a divine fragrance. He followed the scent, came upon a beautiful woman, Satyavati, the daughter of a fisherman. Shantanu was captivated again. He approached her father and asked for her hand in marriage. The fisherman agreed, but with a condition. Only if her children, Satyavati's children, can inherit the throne. Shantanu's heart sank. Devrat had already been declared heir of the kingdom. Bound by dharma, Shantanu could not go back on his word to Devrat, so he walked away, torn and miserable. Devrat soon noticed something was wrong. His father was no longer his radiant self. He found out about the Satyavati and the condition, and then he did something unthinkable. He went to the fisherman and said, "Let your daughter marry my father. I will renounce my claim to the throne." The fisherman paused. He goes, "What if your children later fight for the kingdom?" Without hesitation, Devrat took a vow. "I will remain celibate for life. I will never marry. I will never father children." The skies thundered. Celestials being showered flowers. A divine voice echoed, and it says, "Bhishma, Bhishma, Bhishma." What is Bhishma means? Is the one who has taken a terrible, fearsome vow. Being celibate for life may not sound as big because so many sages has done that, but for a kshatriya it's a massive thing. It is a terrible vow. Shantanu, when heard this, overwhelmed with emotion, embraced his son and blessed him with Ichha Mrityu, the power to choose the time of his own death. Now, let's reflect. What is the lesson here? The lesson number 5, parenting. The true gift of parenting is the values. Think about what shaped Devrat into Bhishma. Not just education or privilege, but the values given by his mother, the way she raised him with clarity, courage, and integrity. Here's a story to reflect this. During a World War II, a young American pilot, Butch O'Hare, bravely fought off enemy planes and saved an entire ship alone. And today, Chicago's O'Hare Airport is named after him. But here's the twist. His father was Easy Eddie, a lawyer for the gangster Al Capone. One day, Eddie's son said, "Dad, I'm ashamed to be a son of you. I'm ashamed to be a son of a criminal. I hate you're my dad." All this shook Eddie. He realized that the greatest inheritance he could give was not money, but a good name. He turned against Capone and was killed. And in doing so, he gave his son the most valuable gift: principles. Just like Bhishma, who was raised not just to succeed, but to stand firm for what is right. This brings us to lesson number 6. The spirit is strong, but the flesh is weak. Shantanu knew his duty, but his heart was swayed by desire. He didn't act wrongly, but he struggled. And that's something we all go through. We know what's right, but when we face with temptation, we falter. Let's be honest, how often do we feel pulled by short term urges, even if we know the long term cost? Acknowledging this weakness is the first step of overcoming it. Another lesson: ambition, not at the cost of trouble. Ambition must not disturb the harmony. Satyavati's father wanted her children to be kings. It was ambitious, understandable, but risky. If Shantanu had agreed, it would have created confusion, conflict in the royal lineage. True leadership means knowing when not to push for desires, especially when it affects others. Sometimes restraint is the highest responsibility. Next lesson we have is sensitivity to others, putting people before pride. Devrat saw his father's sadness and acted. He didn't need to. He could have remained here, kept his future, and still be being a good son. But he chose to sacrifice his personal ambition for his father's happiness and the kingdom's peace. Can we do the same? Can we put family harmony and dharma ahead of our ego or entitlement? Bhishma's acts wasn't weakness, it was supreme strength through selflessness. And also, lesson number 9: determination, keeping our vows. That's our true inner power. Bhishma never broke his vow, not once throughout his long life, and in return, he received the gift of Ichamritu, the power to choose his moment of death. Now contrast that with us today. How often do we make small promises? I'll wake up early. I will chant every day. I will control my anger. I'll give up this bad habit. And how easily we slip. But here's the truth: every time we keep a promise, even a small one, we rise in our own eyes. And when we rise in our own eyes, the world follows. That is real power. Not control over others, but mastery over others. And so, the Bhishma, the terrible vow giver, became a pillar of Kuru dynasty, loved by all, feared in battle, unmatched in discipline and loyalty. But his vow will come back to haunt the kingdom, for when trouble arises, Bhishma's sense of duty will be tested like never before. And let's explore this in the next slide. So, Shantanu Maharaj had Devrat, later known as Bhishma, as we all know. He has taken a vow of celibacy, so he couldn't be the king. So that left the kingdom in the hands of Satyavati's sons, two boys. Who are these? Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. Now, Chitrangada was strong, mighty warrior, a perfect candidate for the throne. But something strange happened. Far away in the Gandharva Loka, the celestial realm of musician, there was another one called Chitrangada, a Gandharva, who got insecure when he found out that someone on earth shared his name and fame. In his jealousy, Gandharva descended to earth and challenged Chitrangada to have a fight, have a duel, and after a long, fierce battle, killed him. Just because of the name. This brings us to the lesson: a disease of comparison. Comparison kills. Think about it. Why did this celestial being even feel threatened? Just because someone shared his name? That's a disease of comparison which causes insecurity, envy, and ultimately destruction. There is no one like you. You are unique. No one has your fingerprints. No one has your voice. No one can be you. Think of an example just in cooking. Every spice has its role. We can't say jeera is better than haldi. Both are needed. So too, every soul is valuable and unique in Krishna's creation. But comparison, it robs you of peace, of joy, of your own identity. Well, now let's get back to the story. So Chitrangada is gone. That leaves us with the only son, Vichitravirya. But he's far from ideal. He's addicted to alcohol, lacks discipline, isn't fit for throne. So the problem is, who will be the next king? Satyavati and Bhishma begin to worry and they decided maybe Vichitravirya can have a children who will rule in his place. But for that, he needs to get married. But who will marry such an unstable prince? Enter Bhishma takes it upon himself and finds the brides for his brother. He goes to a Swayamvar, a royal ceremony where princesses choose their grooms, and find three sisters, Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika. He defeats all the challenges with ease. After all, that is Bhishma, trained by Parshuram, taught by Brahaspati, and blessed with Ichamitru, the boon to choose his own time of death. Bhishma brings the three girls home. Ambika and Ambalika agree to marry Vichitravirya, but Amba, she was already in love with another king called Shalva. In fact, this entire Swayamvar was meant for her to choose him. She tells Bhishma, "You should have asked me first." Bhishma, being honorable, apologizes and sends her back to the Shalva with full respect. But Shalva was a petty, small-minded attitude, rejects her. He said, "You were touched by another man. I can't marry you." Now Amba is heartbroken. She returns to Bhishma and says, "Then marry me. You marry me." Bhishma says, "I've taken a vow of celibacy. I cannot." And that's when Amba burns with the fire of revenge. She declares, "I'll be cause of your death." And she goes to Parshuram and begs him to fight Bhishma. The battle takes place actually, teacher versus student. But even Parshuram is defeated. Parshuram returns and says, "I'm sorry, no one in this world can defeat Bhishma." Amba's rage only grows. If she cannot defeat Bhishma in this life, she vows to do so in the next. She performs a severe penance and self-immolates, retaken birth as a Shikandi in the kingdom of Drupad, in the family of King Drupad. Though born as a girl, she is transformed into a man by the boon of a Yaksha. And in the great Mahabharat war, Shikandi becomes the cause of Bhishma's fall. And this brings us a lesson: rising above the revenge by forgiveness. Amba's story teaches us how revenge can consume you. It's like holding a brick, not for a minute, but for years. The longer you hold it, the more pain it causes. Sometimes we've been wronged, insulted, hurt, and we hold on to it forever. There are two options. Number one, revenge. Carry the pain, feel the anger, feed the anger. Forgiveness, second option. Release the weight and rise above. There's a beautiful Sanskrit verse that explains this. Narse bharam rupam, rupam se bharan guna, gun se bharan jnana, jnana se bharan kshama. The ornament of a human is beauty, but the ornament of a beauty is virtue. The ornament of a virtue is knowledge, and the ornament of a knowledge is forgiveness. You may be the most beautiful, you may be the most talented, but if you can't forgive, you still carry a heavy heart. Mahabharata teaches us not just how kingdoms rise and fall, but how hearts are tested, and how true warrior is the one who conquers within. And after all the chaos and effort, what happens next? Well, Vichitra Virya dies without a child. And now think about it. All of the Bhishma's sacrifice, Satyavati's ambition, and their dreams for the kingdom, and now there is no heir. Right? So, lesson here is plan to live by his plan, God's plan. We often make our own detailed plan for life, don't we? But life doesn't always follow our script. Here's a beautiful lesson to remember. Write your plan in pencil and give the eraser to God. Let me tell you a quick story to illustrate. A father takes his son to a sweet shop, his uncle's shop. The uncle kindly says to the child at the end, once they've met each other, he said, "Ah, beta, take as many sweets you want from the jar." The boy shyly looks at his father. Father encourages him, "Go, take some sweets." The child doesn't move. Finally, uncle takes a handful of sweets, puts him in the child's hand, and later father asks, "Why didn't you take the sweets yourself?" The child replied, "Because uncle's hand is bigger than mine, daddy." That's the lesson for us. Let God's hand give, not ours. He knows better. So now, with no hair in sight, Satyavati becomes desperate. She realizes that the time, place, and circumstances have changed, and dharma must be practiced with discretion. As Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita as well, dan, tap, and dharma must be done on a right time, right place, and deshe patre, the worthiness of the recipient. In short, principles must remain, but application must be dynamic. And Satyavati now opens up. She tells Bhishma a secret that no one knew. She reveals that before her marriage to Shantanu, she had another son. It happened when she was a young maiden, ferrying people across the river, doing her duties as a boatwoman, and one day a powerful sage appeared from the mist, Parashar Muni. Satyavati was frightened, but Parashar said, "You have chosen to give birth to a divine soul, a literary incarnation of the Supreme Lord. You will be glorified as his mother." She was shocked. She wasn't married. She didn't know what to do. But Parashar consoled her and mentioned, your purity will remain as it is. No one will see this pregnancy, and as a blessing, you will carry a divine fragrance that no perfume on earth can match. Divine fragrance. Remember, guys, this is exactly what Shantanu was attracted to in the story. We've covered it before. And that child was none other than Vedavyas, the author of the Mahabharata, the compiler of the Vedas, and the one we revere as Krishna Dvayapanna Vyasa. That brings us the lesson sacrificing secrets for a higher cause. Satyavati now humbly requests her son Vyas to help continue the royal lineage. She asks him to impregnate Ambika and Ambalika through divine niyog, a practice permitted during the time of crisis in Vedic culture. But here's a twist. Satyavati says, your brother-in-law will come to your chamber to impregnate you. And the queens assume it was Bhishma. But when Vyasa enters, his appearance is fierce, his body smeared with medicinal ghee, and his form powerful and unworldly. Ambika was expecting powerful Bhishma, but is shocked to see Vedavyas in the sage medicinal ghee smelled form. She's shocked and closed her eyes tightly in fear. Vyasa comes out and says, she will give birth to a son, Dhritarashtra. He will have a strength of 10,000 elephant, but because she closed her eyes, he will be born blind. Next is Ambalika. She steels herself not to close her eyes, but when Vyasa enters, she turns pale in fear. Vyasa exits and give birth to a son who will be a Vyasa says she will give birth to a son who will be a weak and pale, but he'll have a vision and intelligence. He'll be called Pandu. Satyavati requests Vyasa once more to try Ambika again, but this time Ambika sends her maid instead. That maid was calm and composed, receives Vyasa with humility and without fear, and through her Vidurji was born, a man of wisdom, integrity, and deep knowledge who becomes a key advisor of Hastinapur. This brings us a lesson here. How do we respond to life? We all face three difficult, frightening situations. What our response defines the outcome. Number one, there are three typical reactions. Number one is fright, like Ambika did. We close our eyes and freeze. Number two is fight, like Ambalika did. We panic and resist. Number three is flight, like Ambika, who sent someone else to face the situation. But the fourth way is the divine way, is to face the challenge with faith and wisdom, just like a maid did, calm and composed. Ready. Remember, if you avoid fear, it grows. And if you face fear, it shrinks. Let me give you one more story. The story of 19 horses and the well. A father leaves 19 horses in his will. He writes 50% of my horses to the eldest son, 25% to the second, 25% to the temple. But how did they divide 19 horses like that? They argue and struggle until a wise man on a horse comes along. He said, let me add my horse to yours. Now you have 20 horses, 10 goes to the eldest, 5 goes to the second, and 5 horses to the temple. All sorted, the wise man takes his horse back and ride away. Sometimes we all need this is a little help from God. Just add Krishna to the equation and everything balance out. So now the kingdom has 3 heirs. Dhritarashtra, which is strong but blind. Pandu, a weak but intelligent, Vidur, wise but not royal by birth. Each has strength, each has weaknesses, just like all of us. And this sets the stage for the next chapters of Mahabharata. So, after the death of Vichitravirya, the two important figures step forward, Dhritarashtra and Pandu, the sons of Vyasadev, born through divine arrangement. Dhritarashtra was born strong and capable, but blind from birth. He eventually marries Gandhari, the princess of Gandhar. But Gandhari does something truly extraordinary. She blinds for herself for life, so that she too can live in the same darkness as her husband. Not because she had to, but out of loyalty, sacrifice, and sense of unity. Now, this raises a deep question. What does a true empathy looks like? Sometimes we support others by staying strong and offering help. Other time, we try to feel their pain like Gandhari did. This leads us to lesson number 15. You can't analyze karma. One day, Dhritarashtra asked Krishna, and he got the opportunity to speak to the Lord himself. And sometimes we also have this question, which we wanted to ask God. Why me, God? Why me? Dhritarashtra asked the very question to Krishna. Why was I born blind? Why did I lose all of my 100 sons? Krishna replied with a gentle smile. He says, let me tell you, in your previous life, you were a hunter. You carelessly blinded a bird, a father bird, who nested, whose nest held 100 eggs. The one act of harm led to two powerful consequences. In this life, the Trishta was born blind. He lost his 100th son. Karma is not random. It's not revenge. It is precise. We may not understand it, but that doesn't mean it's unjust. And in this, Dhritarashtra even replied back to Krishna. He said, Why, why you said I was in my previous 50th previous life? Why not my very next life? You've given me this karma. Why do I have to wait for 50 lifetimes later? And that's when Krishna replied, saying, in order to have 100 sons, you have to accumulate lots of pious acts. So hence, that's why you have to wait for 50 lifetimes to get your karma fully settled. Lesson number 16, gratitude. Gratitude over the lack. So have a gratitude list rather than a lack list. Let's take an example. Dhritarashtra could say either of the following. Number one, I was born blind, but in a royal family. That's a gratitude. I was born blind, but in a royal family. So same line. I was born in a royal family, but blind. That's a regret. Both are true, but when you focus on the changes, and the focus on changes your experience, we all have the choices every day. Do we focus on what we lack, or do we focus on what on a gratitude list? Here's a fun way to remember this with a shortcut. Don't live in a BMW mode, blame, morose, or worry. Instead, switch to a CID mode. Can I do something about it? Can I do? CID. Can I do something about it? If yes, take action. If no, surrender to Krishna. Now let's shift to Pandu, the younger brother. Pandu was not as physically strong as Dhritarashtra, but he was humble, thoughtful, and wise. One day he made a terrible mistake. He accidentally shot a deer during a hunt, But this was no ordinary day. It was a sage in disguise, spending a sacred moment with his wife. In anger, Sage cursed Pandu. He said, "As you killed me in my moment of joy, you too shall die in your moment of great enjoyment." This shook Pandu deeply. Feeling unworthy to rule, he voluntarily gave up the throne and retired to the forest, and choosing simplicity over spiritual life over power. But one day he got so close to his wife Madhuri, and the curse came true. He died instantly. Madhuri, overwhelmed by grief and guilt, gave up her life too, leaving their children behind. Values versus valuables. And here we see the contrast. Dhritarashtra clung on to the valuables, power, throne, legacy. Pandu chooses values, humility, truth, simplicity. That one choice led to the very different destinies. Now, the big question: who will be the next king? Technically, Yudhishthira, the firstborn son of Pandu, should be the king. He was born to Kunti, Pandu's first wife, through divine boon. She called upon the Lord of Dharma, Yamraj, and gave birth to a child of righteousness. But here's a twist: Gandhari was also pregnant. With her pregnancy, but her pregnancy lasted more than a year. Not 9 months, more than a year. Frustrated and envious, she hit her belly, and a lump of flesh came out. Vedvyas came and divided the lump into 100 parts and placed them in jars. Eventually, those became her 100 sons, the Kauravas, led by Duryodhan. And now the stage is set. Two families, two lineages, Pandavas and Kauravas, and the seeds of envy, destiny, and war has now been sown. So, after a generation of choices, curses, sacrifices, and rivalries, the stage is finally set. The Kauravas and Pandavas, two branches of the same royal family, now face to face, about to fight in the most epic battle of all times, a Kurukshetra war. But before the first arrow is fired, something truly divine takes place. A sacred conversation begins. A spiritual manual is revealed. The Bhagavad Gita is spoken. So let's talk about some of the facts. Who's the speaker? It was spoken by Lord Krishna himself. Who's the listener? It was addressed to Arjuna, but meant for all of us. Timeline: it happened over 5,000 years ago. What was the location? It's on the holy battlefield of Kurukshetra. Gita is made up of 18 chapters. It contains 700 verses, of which one was spoken by Dhritarashtra, 41 by Sanjaya, 84 by Arjuna, and a whopping 574 verses were spoken by Lord Krishna himself. That means more than 80% of the Gita is Krishna's direct words, a divine GPS to guide us through the life's greatest challenges. Kaurva had a massive army of 11 Akshonis army, and you can see what one Akshoni entails. And Pandavas has 7 Akshonis, altogether 18 Akshonis, 21,870 chariots, 21,870 elephants, 65,610 horses, 109,350 infantry soldiers. Can you even imagine that scale? But the true greatness isn't of this war wasn't in the numbers. It was the message revealed right before the first arrow flew. And finally, let's not forget the Sanjaya, the narrator. He wasn't even on the battlefield, but thanks to Divya Drishti, his divine vision granted by Vyasdev, He could see and hear everything from afar in the palace. And it is through Sanjaya's narration that we hear the Bhagavad Gita today. So, today we've journeyed through generations of decisions, from King Shantanu and Bhishma to Pandu to Dhritarashtra to Gandhari and Kunti, and finally we've arrived at the Kurukshetra, where everything is now set for the greatest war in history. But just before the battle begins, one warrior, one brave, mighty, noble Arjuna, faces a crisis that freezes him in the tracks. His bow drops, his heart trembles, and in that moment of fear, doubt, inner confusion, he turns to Krishna for guidance. And that's where Bhagavad Gita truly begins. Next week, we will dive into chapter 1, Arjuna Vishad Yoga, the yoga of Arjuna's despair. We'll explore Arjuna's emotional struggle and reflect on how it mirrors our own challenges today. So until then, here's something to take away. Think about the stories we've covered today, from compassion to revenge to karma to gratitude. Which one resonates most with you? And what's one lesson you can apply this week? Share a comment. Thank you all for being here and sharing this journey together. See you all next week as we open the sacred conversation of Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna.